in this culture that I'm working in the Middle East, relationships are very important. This is a culture that a handshake means something. It's a signature. When you promise something, they hold you accountable for it. And they always believe that you're going to work and you promise in the highest integrity. So getting to know people, and I guess some people label as being nice. So sometimes people would say, oh, you're just too nice. Yeah, I probably have a nice style of leadership, but that doesn't mean I don't have a clear style of leadership. But in this culture, sometimes being nice can trump competency. Because if they can't trust you because you're so arrogant or you're very abrasive or very combative, it doesn't matter if you're right. They won't receive it.
Welcome to Let's Get Real, Candid Conversations, a series where we explore leadership, purpose, and impact with those who are shaping the future of healthcare and beyond. Today's conversation is entitled Global Leadership in Action, Lessons from an International Nurse Executive. Today's guest is Judy Dawson Jones, an international nurse executive whose career reflects both the depth and breadth of leadership across diverse healthcare settings. Judy's global perspective and steadfast dedication to drive purpose-driven leadership continues to shape the legacy she is building for the profession. We are honored to welcome her to this Candid Conversations. So with such a rich journey across cultures, healthcare systems, and leadership roles, Judy, I'd love to start by asking you, when you look back on your career, what experiences most shaped your leadership philosophy?
Okay, that's a very interesting question for me. When I started in leadership, I really had always wanted to go on the clinical track. So I always wanted to be a clinical nurse specialist, and that was my goal, to be a clinical nurse specialist. But I also was that nurse on the floor that always asked the questions, try to represent the group. Sometimes it could have seemed to be a little negative, and somehow the powers that be always kept putting me into leadership positions. I never liked leadership. Anyone that had any control over my life and schedule at the time and where I was maturity wise, I didn't like. And so, one of the experiences in the beginning, I think, that really shaped my philosophy throughout my whole career was I was working on a unit on a weekend alternative program. And it was a new program. We would work 2 shifts during the weekend and we got paid almost full time. But we had a lot of problems with the handover to the weekdays. And so there were a lot of things that were missing that we didn't necessarily get or understand. So I was always on Monday morning talking to the director saying, we need these questions answered. Can we make this process better? And she said, well, I think you should be the manager on the weekend. And I was like, oh, me a manager? That was definitely not my track. But the team said, you have to be the manager. We want you to be the manager. It's going to be you or this other person, and you have to take it. So I kind of took it for the team. And it worked out for me really well. Then the program was discontinued. And you'll understand what I'm saying is when I get there. So the program was discontinued. And she brought me in during the daytime. Well, it didn't make sense because there were already 2 managers there, but the 2 managers were sort of at the opposite polar of the way they worked and agreed. Constantly a lot of conflict, and I guess I was put there in the middle to navigate. So I worked through that, navigated the 2, helped with the units, and then she said, we have these new clinical nurse manager 2 positions, and I think I want you to be that. And I'm like, no, I'm supposed to do the clinical nurse specialist track. You promised me, we're giving me the time for that. We promise you that, Judy, just take this position. I'll mentor you. I'll be there for you. Take the clinical manager 2 of this unit. I did, and she resigned in 2 weeks. And why I say that shaped my management or my philosophy was that all of a sudden I was thrust in this huge leadership position. The hospital was in turmoil. They laid off half the staff, said that our unit would be half the size, but of course, as the population grew and the demand that year, we still had the same census with half the staff. I had this budget they were asking me to meet, these criteria, never had budget training, never had leadership training, didn't have a mentor at the time, and just sort of got thrown into it. And it was sort of like sink or swim. And I had to figure out how to make it work. And I remember one day being really stressed out after a leadership meeting and being told that we were really over budgeted and I had to figure it out, and I just didn't know what to do. So I made a decision and said, maybe you don't know what to do. Let's ask the staff. So I had a meeting and I put everything up on this bulletin board, probably things that I shouldn't have with the budget. I'm not even sure if I had people's salaries up there. I didn't know. Put this whole budget up, went to the staff and said, listen, here is our questions. Here's what we have to answer. We want this unit to stay open because we like the patient population and age group. Right now, with this over budget, here's where the budget is. Here's what costs. This is what we have to do. And I don't really know how to do this. How can we do it? And it was interesting. They all stood up. They all stood up to the task. They all came up with this whole idea. They helped me make a plan. They helped really work the plan. They kept us to the plan. There were days when it was so tight, we couldn't leave the floors. We'd have to order out. We did team nursing, met in the middle. And it was very interesting. And what it taught me at that point was that as a leader, you don't always have the answers, but if you really involve and value your staff, they will help you and they will actually move you farther than you can if you do something in an autocratic way. It was a huge lesson for me. And that's carried out throughout my whole career. I've always looked at the team that I've had as really my team. Yes, I'm the leader. Yes, I'm the one that sets the goalposts. Yes, I'm the one that gives the vision. But in the end, it's all about the team. And very quickly, my leadership style was it was never about me, it was about the team and helping the team move forward. And how could I convince and influence the team to do what we needed to do? And while it was very stressful for me during that time, many times I thought I was just going to quit. And it actually answered all the reasons why I did not like leadership. It actually made me stronger. And it really set my whole value and philosophy of strategy of how I would approach leadership as I moved through my career.
I love that. And I totally agree that you get so much further when you include the people that are working with you and beside you. And the other thing is, sometimes we come into a space with what we think is going to happen, and when
Right,
we ask questions, it's shifted in a way, and it becomes even stronger for so
right.
many reasons. I always think about because they're the ones that have to do it, but also because
Mhm.
we as individuals can't think of everything, and so
Right.
a group mindset and pushing that work forward is, I love that, Judy. I love that. I
And
got
everyone pulled together, including the unit secretary, the unit clerks, the nursing assistants. It wasn't just the nurses, even some of the physicians. They were constantly trying to help to make sure they wanted the unit to work. And it worked for me. And I realized there's a lot of limitations I had, but other people had the strengths. And so I sort of, leveraged on those strengths so we could all move forward in the end.
love that. Love that. So Judy, you are a international, say it, nurse leader. I think that's so
That's
important.
what
I
they
love
say.
that. International nurse leader. How do you adapt your leadership style when working across different cultures and healthcare systems?
Okay. So I've mostly been an ambulatory nurse most of my career in leadership, and somehow got thrown into the inpatient side. As my colleague said, you went to the dark side, but it just helped me have a 360 viewpoint. But I worked in primary care, and I worked in the Goldberg Center for Primary Care, and I love working with the community. My master's is in public health, and I have a tendency to look at everything as a population, whether it's staff, units, things of that nature, and what is your population and how does it work? So culturally, I was used to being pretty working with diverse. So when I came internationally, it was new to me. I mean, I had never worked internationally before. I didn't know what the expectations were. But when I was recruited, a physician said to me, "This is our dream to open this pediatric hospital. Judy, please come help us with the dream." I never had anyone ask me that, but that resonated with me. So, what I've learned a lot over time is listening, just listening and observing and being open to a lot of different viewpoints. I'll give you one example that I learned. I was working in a military hospital and back in the day, and we had a neonatal unit and a nursery. We had a lady from China. She was a government worker, and when we would come in, she always had the babies on their back. And this is in the 80s.
Mm,
And we would be like, the babies are supposed to be on their stomachs. And so we would come in, the babies would be on their back. We flip them, we put them on their stomach. And she used to say to us, the evidence says the babies do better on their back. But because we were sort of arrogant, we were just top military, we're American, what do you know? We put the babies in their stomach, so if they have any events, they won't choke. We just knew everything.
Mhm.
We didn't even explore what she meant at that time, evidence-based. That wasn't a word people used back in the 80s. That wasn't how we thought as nurses. We sort of did what we always have done. Fast forward about 10, 15, maybe not even 15 years past that, we went to the back to sleep. Babies were supposed to be on their back.
Right.
And we proved that they were able to decrease sudden infant death syndrome by putting them on their back. And I always thought about this nurse because I said, if we had only listened to her,
Mhm.
how many lives could we have saved?
Mm.
How many babies may not have had an event if we had listened to her 15 years ago and just explored it? So
Mhm.
when I went into my international realm, I did the same thing. Just because we've done it the way I've done it for years, there are other societies that have done it differently but have the same outcomes. And so I had to learn to listen and ask why and learn why and be patient and not always have the idea or the thought, but to be open. And staff appreciate it when they're heard, when they can be heard, you can speak and you ask them and you give them a platform where they can present. Because the key with my hospital was that how do you take all these cultures and make it into one culture? And how do you make that and but blend it and that all the cultures there are heard? So mostly it was by listening, being
Mhm.
inquisitive, having more of a nature of being of inquiry, research, allowing people to talk, and then being able to mitigate whatever we needed to do to make sure that care was safe. But I learned a lot. One example, we speak English at this hospital, but most people there, English is their second language.
Mhm.
I had to learn that, like Americans, we get very excited about a subject and we sometimes can break in someone's sentence, we sort of kind of interrupt. You can't interrupt someone speaking their second language. They can't recover that quick. So you have to be patient, let people finish, understand the reason they're talking slower is not because they're talking slow, they're speaking in a second language.
Mhm.
I also had to learn that terminology was very interesting. There are things like we used to laugh. We went out one night and we all did a word game. UK calls a medication cart trolley. I think a trolley is a bus. They call neonatal beds cots. And that's not a cot. We call it a crib. It's just so many words that we use, and sometimes you'll make a statement and not realize that they don't understand what you mean because of the word you used.
Mhm.
So you have to take your time and explain it to figure out, oh, they're like, oh, that's what you mean. So just understanding language and coming up with a legend that everyone can understand.
Absolutely.
So I would say patience, being willing to learn, being open, I
Mhm.
would say is one way you can do it. And to lead with being more of a level of inquiry and treating everyone as if they're their own expert.
I love that. I love that. And I also think that everything you said, whether you're international, national, in your own space, we all know that these places that we're working are have multiple cultures in them. And so I think that everything you said can be applied in those spaces as well.
Mhm.
Especially, to your point about sometimes we'll jump in, I thought you were going to say it's disrespectful because it is. No matter, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
right,
it is.
you're in a space with other leaders,
Mhm.
we're talking, you should allow it. And I do it too, because you're right, you get so excited, you want to add. But I've learned sometimes just to sit back and listen. And actually, maybe what I was going to add might shift. Maybe it's not relevant anymore. And so I think whether it's someone's second language or just having, I don't know, being collegial, we should not
Right,
be interrupting people when they talk. But again, we get so like, oh, I gotta say, I have something to add.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Oh,
then also in this culture that I'm working in the Middle East, relationships are very important.
mm,
This is a culture that a handshake means something. It's a signature. When you promise something,
mm,
they hold you accountable for it.
mm,
And they always believe that you're going to work and you promise in the highest integrity. So getting to know people,
mhm, mhm,
and I guess some people label as being nice. So sometimes people would say, oh, you're just too nice. Yeah, I probably have a nice style of leadership, but that doesn't mean I don't have a clear style of leadership.
mhm, mhm,
But in this culture, sometimes being nice can trump competency.
mm,
Because if they can't trust you because you're so arrogant or
mhm,
you're very abrasive or very combative, it doesn't matter if you're right. they won't receive it.
Mhm, mhm.
So I have found by treating people really with respect, and I was given this advice when I came in. One of the nationals said, "Judy, please don't confront us because we don't do good with confrontation." And I listened to them. Also, your style will also help you navigate through the system.
Nice. Nice. So my next question is all around mentoring the next generation of nurse leaders. And I think a lot of things you said related to your leadership philosophy and style and your current practice probably relates to mentoring. But is there anything else that you learned, any lessons learned that you would share when you're mentoring the next generation of nurse leaders?
Mhm. I think when you mentor the next generation, we have to leave our generation behind. So I'm a baby boomer. The way we worked, the way we thought, what was valuable to us is not necessarily should be for now. So for me, I've always was sought out to mentor. I never said I'm going to be a mentor, but I like mentoring. And what has really fueled me is watching other people be successful. It's very interesting. I've had a lot of people I've mentored, and I used to say to my husband, "They're doing great. Wow, they've outpaced me." He said, "Because that's your gift." And it's never been about me. And so I would say first, you don't want to make when you mentor, it's not about you and what your philosophy are, but listen to where that person is and to help them decide where to get to. You can't make decisions for people, but if you really talk to them, really talk with them, not at them, they can actually work out their whole plan on their own. They just need the support and know they're going the right direction. You can share lessons learned. I think also being transparent to say, there's a time I didn't do that quite well, and it didn't pan out for me, but let me give you my experience. Sharing experiences and being very, transparent and being authentic, I think is a way that you can mentor people that are, that are more new or more contemporary than you are because they know that you're really real. But being able to let go some of the things that we have generationally to know that it's not going to be the same. It's a different environment. Everything's different.
That's a really good, several good points with that one. Um, so let's talk a little bit about strategy and vision. Because as leaders, I feel like that's what drives us. That's what we're always thinking about. What's our strategy?
Mhm.
Where are we trying to go for the future? So, how do you balance strategy and vision with the human side of leadership?
Right. Early on in my career, I used to have so many ideas. Probably typically a classic mental case of flight of ideas. So I'm always thinking, always constantly, especially when I was a lot younger in my career. And I had a tendency to always throw these ideas out. Or people would be talking about a situation, they would be on one, two, and three, and I'm on seven, eight, nine. So when I came into the conversation, it didn't make any sense. So I had to learn how to pull back a little bit, think a little bit more, be more purposeful of what I was saying and saying, okay, yeah, you have this vision, but there are steps to get to it. You just can't go for the vision, it's sort of that structure process outcomes.
Mhm, mhm,
So I think it's very important in your role. You have to have a vision. Now that you do. Now you don't necessarily walk into a role and have a vision, but you have to get in, get to know the area, get to know what you're doing, and form a vision because it's that vision that staff will hook into that will help, that will follow you and move forward. And then the strategy is something you have to decide, okay, now that we have the vision, what are the steps and what are the different routes we have to take to get there? And when you have strategy, you have to learn to be very clear with the strategy. There have been times I've stepped out, I've had the strategy, but it's in my head. I understand, no one else understands it. And then I'm trying to figure out why we got to the outcome we got to. So I've had to learn to take my time, make sure that people understood what the vision was and that they could agree and understand what that strategy would be, always knowing that it had to be flexible. It could change at any time. It may need to change during that process in order for you to get there. But it is important. You have to set some type of goalpost because otherwise you put everybody in the football field and they're going in any direction.
yeah, love that. Love that. I definitely, I'm always trying to just fix it. You come to me with a problem, I'm trying to fix it. I see.
Mhm.
And to your point, the communication piece is huge in terms of how
Mhm.
we communicate. And then I was just thinking about this morning, the power of patience. Like sometimes we come up with these ideas, we have thoughts, and sometimes you just have to let it play out, right? You have to
Mhm.
be patient. Yeah.
Right. I always used to tell people sometimes the quietest person in the room has the most power.
Mhm.
When you're sitting at the table, those that are constantly talking, any type of strategy or any kind of power they have at that table, they're giving it up by every minute they keep talking. So people get, listen to them after a while. We all have those in our meetings, the talkers, the talkers, the talkers. You don't even process what they're saying because they're talking so much.
Mhm.
But you're always curious for that person that hasn't said that much. What are your thoughts?
Mhm.
And sometimes when you do speak, people will listen. And so I know that's a hard thing, and some people might disagree with me, but I found that to be more thoughtful, not always trying to have something to say, and not always being the most talkative one has given me more leverage that when I do speak, I feel that people are more willing to listen to what you have to say because they're curious.
Absolutely. That is one of my strategies. I only speak when there's value add. And I also, to your point, when I speak, I want people to listen. So I spend a lot of time making sure building that um, level of, I don't want to keep using the word respect, but that's my favorite word. I don't know why, but
Mm-hmm.
that level of, to your point, curiosity, they want to know what I'm thinking. And so I don't always add value. And it's interesting because I think some cultures professionally do value people that talk all the time or have something to add. But I believe if it's not adding to the conversation, if someone already said it, you don't need to repeat it unless you're trying to affirm them and trying to push that agenda or that piece forward. But you don't always have to speak right in
Mm-hmm.
these spaces, and so because you want to
Right.
bring value to what's to the conversation. So,
And you also want to realize what space you're in. So, like if you're at a high level executive, if there's a good conversation going, you have to know that if I make a comment, I've just ended that conversation
mm,
because they're going to defer to, oh, well, that's what she thinks, so that's where we should think.
right.
So sometimes you want to hear the battering, the different discussions of things. When you work with multicultures, some cultures you work with, they won't speak up at all
Mm,
unless you acknowledge them because they've grown up in a very hierarchical
mm,
environment,
mm,
and you don't speak. Whatever the person that's higher on the hierarchy is the one to speak.
mm,
I did a global health assignment in Africa one time in a country, and I was in a really high level meeting with a nursing school, and it was interesting. They only spoke when their chair called on them,
mm.
which was different for me. I was like, wow, they're not talking. So it's just learning who you're in the room with and what level you are to know that sometimes you have to say less
Yeah, noted. Yep.
to get the most out of everybody. Mhm.
Yep. So agreed. So as nurse leaders today, there's so many different pressing issues. What do you think the most pressing challenges are today for our nurse executives and nurse leaders?
Mhm. I think what's really pressing for us, I know we always want to say the workforce, the nursing workforce levels and numbers. I don't know. We do have a nursing shortage, but our shortage is not necessarily always caused by the numbers. It's also caused by the environment. And so I think the biggest thing that nurse leaders has is really advocating for the organizations they work in to make the culture of acceptance, culture of belonging, people, a culture of respect, a culture of appreciation, a culture where staff feel valued and take care of staff. It's sometimes the last thing the organizations do is take care of the staff, or they'll take care of them in a pretty, representative way that doesn't mean anything, but really letting them feel that they're part of the whole organization and that they're just not working toward the vision, but the staff are the vision.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
so, how do you do that? And that's something that I think nurse leaders need to focus on because we're always going to have our quality goals. We're always going to have our metrics. And yes, we always have to put the patient in the center, but you can't do that if you don't really take care of the staff. So I think that is the biggest challenge of making sure that we create the environments that staff can thrive.
mhm,
Without that, you're going to have a lot of uphill battles.
mm. Love that. Love it. All right. So, one final query for you is as you reflect on your journey, what does it mean to you to lead with purpose? And what legacy do you hope to leave?
Well, my purpose has always been to help build others. And how can I help somebody else grow to their highest potential? How can I contribute to that? How can I let opportunities? Sometimes when you get in a certain position, you have to make opportunities for other people the way you had opportunities made for you. And so every minute I'm thinking, how can I help this person get here? How can I encourage them? How can I support them? So my legacy to me is building. How have I been able to influence others to do well? How many people, how can I look back and say, wow, I contributed a little bit of seed to that person. I mean, it still has to be that person's ability and talent, but I put a little seeds here, but look how they flourished, how they've grown, how you've created a climate that people can grow. Not that someone comes in the climate and they're not doing well, but that you allow them to grow and do better and recognize that. That's my legacy, is how well I've been able to help others do. For some way, from that beginning of my experience, um, it also made me realize when I had to depend on the staff to help, the roles have never been about me. It's always been about the people that I'm leading. And that's the way I've always led. Now, whether that's good or not, sometimes I don't understand my value until I actually leave a role, because I just don't focus on, it's not about Judy, it's about who's on your team, how are you helping your team, how are you help moving them forward, and how are you giving them a sense of purpose, positive purpose, to continue to move forward. And so for me, that's my legacy. I rose to the chief, never wanting to be a chief nurse. It wasn't in my, never was in my plan at all. But I ended up being there, and that's what was interesting. I never planned for it, never wanted it, never was on my thing. But I did do it and enjoyed it. It just gave me more opportunities to help more people grow. And so that was the benefit of being in the position, not because I was the chief, but as a chief, I could help someone go back to school. I could help someone put them in a leadership position. I could give them an opportunity to find their niche. You know, I could do those type of things to help them grow. And so that's my, for me, that's what I like to look back in terms of my legacy, not about me, but what I've been able to help others do.
Love that, Judy. Judy, I definitely want to thank you for your time and joining the Let's Get Real Candid Conversations. I have
Thank
admired
you.
you, enjoyed working with you over the last three, has it been 3 years since we met? Like
Yeah, maybe 2, 3 years. Yes.
years. It's been a great experience for me. I've learned a lot from you. And what I also love is like some of the stuff we talk about is so validating for me as a leader. So I just appreciate you. You
Okay.
are one of my mentors. I'm just saying. So I hope I make you
Thank you.
proud as I continue to advance
Yes.
faith.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Um,
you for having me.
Say it again.
I said, thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. One question I have for you is if anyone wanted to get in touch with you, is there a way they can connect with you on social or
Hmm. Well,
email?
I'm a baby boomer, so I do social, but probably do probably do email and WhatsApp. Actually, email would be the best way. Um, can I give it out?
Yeah.
Okay. I would probably say my personal email, which is Dawson Jones, one word, the number 10 at gmail.com. And just reference where you heard when you met me or why you met me and what you would like. Something I'm moving into retirement now, moving to that phase. And that's something that I would like to do as I move in. How do I help other young leaders? How do I help other, especially other Black leaders? How do I really help, that and really help mentor them, and it not be so formal that it doesn't really fit into what they need.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Judy. All right, guys. Thank you. We'll see you on the next Let's Get Real Candid Conversations. Bye.
Bye bye.